It's astonishing how a group of writers could create a show called Star Trek Starfleet Academy and yet end up with something with no stars, no trekking, and no Starfleet. They don't go into outer space, they don't explore anything. Everybody does whatever the hell they want in the show. The other amazing thing about this is that I'm on episode 3 now. This is early in the season when you want to impress people, make them excited about the show, tell their friends, look forward to the rest of the season, maybe more seasons in the future. And they're like, this is episode 3. Let's do an episode about laser tag and pranks. Because what Star Trek fans want to see is laser tag, like literal laser tag. They're making such huge, obvious mistakes that it's really baffling, actually. This is Star Trek Starfleet Academy episode 3, my workshop review it. And what I'm going to do is review this in a more technical manner. I'm going to take the story apart, the characters apart, to say what's good and what's bad and how to fix it from a writing standpoint, while staying true to the writer's intentions. I'll try to make what they have even better. I'm Ryan Bosling, the Drama King. I have an MFA in creative writing. I was a quarterfinalist in the Nickel Fellowship. I taught for a long time in a university English literature composition, and I used that experience to unpack TV and movies. And in this episode, we're doing episode 3. I'm going to start with a synopsis of the show, then I'll go into my overall review of what I thought, like what was good, what was bad in general. And then I'll go into the 2 main problems with this episode and how to fix them, what they should have done instead. The episode begins with Darren working out very early in the morning over the audio of his personal log to his parents, where he reports that he continues to pursue personal excellence, which contrasts against the laid-back attitude of his roommates. As he leaves his room, he's shocked to discover that Genesis has already started her day, even before him, setting up a rivalry between them. During gym class, the Academy and War College students get into a confrontation, setting up their rivalry. Immediately after, the War College students beam the Academy students out of their locker room and into the Athena's atrium, humiliating them. Darum declares war. Thok briefs Ake about the prank and warns her about the danger of a prank war breaking out, right when a commission is about to arrive to assess the success of the Academy. But Ake doesn't initially take the prank seriously. She tells the students to get the revenge by taking up botany, which, yes, absolutely makes no sense the first time you watch the episode. The students then try out for the Calica team, otherwise known as laser tag, with Darum and Genesis competing to be the captain. Darum wins when he distracts Genesis by bringing up her daddy issues. When the War College does another prank, leaking footage of the Academy students doing badly in their Calica tryouts, the Academy students challenge the War College to a Calica match. The War College easily beats them as Darum shows complete incompetence at leadership. Genesis takes over and devises a plan which involves cheating and destroying parts of the ship, thus winning a point. Darum acknowledges her superior leadership skills and quits the team. Suddenly, the Academy students realize that Ake's botany lesson was her way of secretly telling them how to get revenge of the prank war. They put fast-growing giant plants in the War College's dormitory, scaring them awake. The episode ends with the team getting their Letterman jerseys, finally united, as Darum gives another personal log, this time extolling the virtues of teamwork. So what did I think overall? Well, I thought it was garbage. It feels like a first draft of a script by a mediocre writer, and it needs 4 more edits, 4 more drafts. I mean, I've seen a lot of stuff that was at this level and better in workshop classes. So it's pretty pathetic how bad this is in terms of the writing and the structure and how they built that up. But I'll go over the good really quick. The biggest good in this was Genesis. I think she's a good character. I like the actress. She's likable. But she's the only character with a little bit of complexity and fullness, in that she has an attitude and a personality. So she's kind of sweet, she's helpful, but she's also sarcastic and teasing. She doesn't fold under pressure, but she isn't a maniac or unlikable. She's still likable. So I like her, and they should use more of her as a bedrock for the whole show. She should be one of the main characters going forwards. You might think the other characters have personality and an attitude, but they're actually very one-note, as I'm going to show a little bit later on. She's the only one who has complexity, the kind of complexity I was talking about. Strangely, this episode was like Genesis porn, kind of. They showed her body off a lot, and a lot of the other characters too, of course. In Star Trek, I'm not crazy about it. The problem is they're using the sex stuff, the sexiness, to jazz up things, to distract you, basically, because in these scenes, not much is really happening character-wise or story-wise or plot. It's just people talking back and forth. So if you see naked bodies, you're like, oh, I like that. So it's a sign of weakness in the script, I would say. And you can see how calculated it is on the part of I guess it would be the director, maybe the writers too. In this locker room scene, the only person who's actually naked is Caleb. Everybody else is wearing a bathing suit
for some inexplicable reason, because they weren't swimming. And they did it because they're trying to make Caleb into some sort of sex symbol. And he's like shredded. Nobody else is shredded. So he's the one they're showing off. So it's just like calculated. They know what they're doing. And it's, to me, it's a sign of weakness and exploitation of the viewers.
The other good thing was the Romulan War College girl. I thought she was really good. She's not a complex character or anything, of course, because she barely appears really. But she had a unique like physical aspect of her to her that reminded me of like Joker or Harley Quinn. She's kind of crazy, psychotic, unpredictable, kind of a little funny, a little wacky. And actually, I like the War College characters more than the main ones for the most part. Because the War College characters are crazy and they want something and they do it even though they're going to break the rules. So you want active characters, and they are active. And you want characters who are unique, have a twist. And those characters are kind of psychotic sometimes. Like you have that Vulcan War College kid. And he has that Vulcan aspect of like real flat demeanor, flat voice and face. But then he's doing psycho stuff. So he's like a psycho Vulcan, which is kind of interesting. You never really seen that. I don't remember seeing that. So I wanted to see more of that. Another thing I liked is the ending of the show. And I said this basically in the last episode, so I won't go into it. But they're good at nailing the endings because they use the music, the camera work. They like the soft lighting from the evening light, the sunlight. It's kind of warm. And the characters, they feel more comfortable around each other towards the end. The actors feel more comfortable in their roles. And it feels like a family, like they belong together. And so in a way, I do feel bad that I heard that the show is going to be canceled after the second season. And it's too bad because if they had better writers, they could have, even though I wasn't crazy about these characters at the start or the concept of the show, which I went over in the first episode review, I'm starting to kind of like them, sort of, even though they're terrible characters and it's a stupid show, stupid story. But I do feel bad because you could do something with these actors and these characters. The last thing I liked is the uniform. When they play sports and you take that armor off, I'll show it here, but it actually looks cool. It's just it reminds me of the old original Star Trek. And it looks way better than the uniforms they actually use in the show. So just use that. Throw out the crap that they're wearing. It's badly tailored. It looks stupid, their uniforms. It's amateur hour. Just use that. That's cool. So what's the bad about it? Well, the bad is just about everything else in the show. It's about kids doing laser tag and pranks. It's silly. It was boring for reasons I'll go into. Structurally, it doesn't work. And it's kind of flatline. There's zero interest, zero tension in the show. And that's what I'm going to break down in a sec. But the show did have a good heart, and it tried to deal with Star Trek themes like leadership and teamwork and understanding and fear. And some of the characters did learn lessons, even though it didn't work organically the way they set up the show. But supposedly they learned and they changed towards the end. And so that's good. They attempted to do that. So I like those elements of it. And so this episode, I would say, is better than the last two episodes, but it's still bad at heart. So it's a 4.5 out of 10 for me. Now, there's one bad thing I need to mention. It's not one of the main problems, so I'll just mention it here quickly, and then I'll get on to the main problems. But something that I noticed is that the characters are getting trapped into being one note, to the point that it's almost humorous or pathetic. Like Thok. Every time Thok appears on screen, just about, she's screaming. She's always screaming. She screams in the gym. She screams about death, again in this episode, which she did in the last one. She screams to end their fight. She screams to end the sports match. She's just screaming. Every time she's on screen, she's screaming. And yet, she's powerless. She never punishes anybody in a meaningful way. Nobody is scared of her. No one respects her. So she feels pathetic. She's a terrible character. The show would be better if they deleted her. And that's not against the actor. That's purely writing that I'm talking about here. Another character that's trapped is the hologram girl, Sam. She's basically there just to support Genesis. She's always following Genesis. She jumps in on Genesis's comments. She's always saying Genesis is awesome. She doesn't have her own interests, and she doesn't pursue her own goals. So she's also a worthless character, and she's actually irritating. I don't like it. The Klingon is also getting trapped. The Klingon kid, Worf Jr., all he does is complain about violence. And he does it when it's not part of the story. Like, they'll purposely start like a little mini scene just so he could say, I don't do violence, or whatever. And then that scene is over. Like, they did it, I think, 3 times, where he has to point out that he doesn't pursue violence. He likes peace. It's like, okay, I get the idea, man. Move on. Let's see get some story going here with your character. Caleb is also kind of in a trap because He's always talking about how he doesn't do teams. He doesn't do teamwork. He's a bad boy. He's a rebel. He just says that so many times in every single episode now. And I'm tired of it. We get the idea. Just move on now. You don't need to mention that all the time. Like, your characters should not say what they stand for or what they believe in. We should know it through their actions, their decisions, and generally like their dialogue. Not in terms of how they say it, but what they say around it. You don't want to point it out directly. Because the reason these writers are having the characters say what they stand for is because they can't get their personalities across through action, through story, because there's really no story and no action going on. So they're always reminding us what these characters believe in. And that's just, it's horrific. It's really bad. How do you communicate complex psychological issues or states without having the characters announce it? Well, the way you do it is you put it into action so that the audience could watch and come to those conclusions on their own. So for instance, take Genesis. Let's say she's in her room, just hanging out or whatever. Then the computer announces there's an incoming call from her father. Immediately she changes. She goes from being laid back and hanging out to she starts running around the room. She's cleaning up everything. She straightens her bed up. And before she started, her room wasn't even a mess to our eyes. It was pretty clean, pretty tidy. But now she's like maniacally going around making everything perfect. She faces the camera. And during this whole period, there's like a beep from the computer indicating that her father is waiting. So there's a little bit of tension there. And then she faces the screen and she fixes her clothing, straightens her clothing, fixes her hair. And then she stops for a second. She puts on an obviously fake smile. And then she opens the channel. So now her dad is on the screen. And she says, "Hello, father." Now that alone would basically tell you that she has daddy issues. Because, she's eager to please. She has to be perfect for him. She put that fake smile on for him. All of these issues allow the audience to draw the conclusions on their own without her saying 2 or 3 times this episode, "I have daddy issues." That's lazy. It doesn't communicate anything. You don't know whether to believe it or not. But if you see her in action and draw those conclusions, you've read the person and you know what they believe in, what they stand for, what their problem is, more or less. The other character who's getting trapped is Ake. Ake is so quirky that they've ruined any chance of her being seen as professional or as being a real leader, as being the captain or the chancellor. Every time she's on screen, just about, she's doing weird things in chairs, sitting weird, rolling on the floor, playing with her feet, giggling. It's really ludicrous. It's almost like a parody of itself. Like if SNL made a skit making fun of the show, that's what they would have her doing, like crazy little baby stuff on the floor. And she actually does it. But then every time they show her, she's never working. When does this woman work? When does she do work for the academy? Because whenever anybody goes into the office or you see her in her office, she's just sitting back, she's laying back, she's listening to records. Like, what happened to the old days? The captain's actually in their office working at the start of the scene, and then a character walks in and brings a problem to them. That doesn't happen here. And so her character is ruined, just like a lot of these other characters right now are trapped and kind of ruined. They'd have to be reset to make these characters work. Another quick trap is so many of these characters, their main conflict is with their parents. They just have daddy and mommy issues. So you have Caleb, supposedly the main character, is obsessed with his mom. You have Darren Ramey obsessed with his parents. You have Genesis obsessed with her dad. You have Sam, the hologram girl, who they haven't, obviously she doesn't have parents, I don't think, in the normal sense, but she seems a little bit obsessed with the doctor. She sees the doctor as like her adoptive father kind of leading her. So all these characters have the same issues, and that creates a bad dynamic where all the storylines are going to be somewhat similar. And you could see it in this episode because there's Darren Ramey and Genesis both dealing with their parental problems and their insecurities. So they should have had maybe one character that had a problem with their parent. That would probably be Caleb, because his mom, and that whole thing is like the central story of the season, I assume, even though it's not really coming up much. And then come up with other stuff from other characters. You don't need to do the mommy and daddy stuff. There's plenty of options out there. And now we come to the main problems. Main problem number 1. Whose story is this? How would you summarize this episode in just like one sentence, maybe 2 sentences? And the problem is I can't do it. I mean, I could force it by reshaping the story, basically, dropping stuff and so on. But the problem is this episode is way too stuffed. All right, so look at these questions I have. Is this a story about Darren and his parents, overcoming his parents? Or is it about Genesis overcoming her dad's expectations? Or is it about Darren and Genesis's relationship? Or is it about Ake being so clever, how she set up the pranks and no one even knew? Or is it about Caleb and Tarima? Or is it about the students trying out to make the team? Or is it about the unsanctioned laser tag match? Or is it about the academy and the war college pranking each other? Or is it about that final heist where the team has to come together to do a big heist? You see all these questions? This is way, way, way too much material for one episode. It's really ridiculous. Like, you could do an episode just about a laser tag match or tournament, or you could do it about the pranking, or about any of the other stuff I said. Now, yes, you could have multiple things happening in one episode, and in fact, you should. Generally, you want a plot and a subplot, or the A plot and the B plot. But this has like A, B, C, D, E, F, G. They're going through the alphabet in this. Just choose like two of them, maybe three. You could have a third one that's really kind of minor in the background. That would probably be like Caleb and Tarima or something. But they just dumped way too much material in this. And so what I'm going to try to do is ascertain what the main storylines are and how do you figure this out and how do you shape a story around that without getting bogged down in this swamp they created. And there's another problem with all these storylines that I mentioned, and it's that every single one of them isn't worthy of being the A plot. It's B plot material in any other Star Trek episode. So the way Star Trek usually works, in most shows in fact, or movies, everything, the A plot is like the big, overarching, important thing. That's the thing where there's the most danger, the most excitement, the most violence, maybe not physically, but it could be in terms of the dialogue, in terms of the characters facing changes, having to change their lives or in reaction to the threat or whatever. So generally in Star Trek, the big A plot would like the ship's in danger. And so they have to solve that problem. Or maybe some crew members are in danger and they have to solve that problem. And then the B plot would usually be the personal stuff, where like characters learn to work with each other, or they have to confront their past, or this or that. So you'd want like a big kind of sci-fi storyline for the A plot, and then the B plot would be something smaller. In here, we don't have that. We have laser tag, we have pranks, we have kids and their mommy and daddy issues, and so on. So, I mean, it's amazing that they created a show stuffed with so much material, and yet they didn't even get close to the bullseye on getting an A plot. They put the darts like all around it didn't even hit the board. It's like on the wall. They couldn't get an A plot out of this. So we're gonna have to beef something up to get a worthy storyline for the A plot that covers basically the whole episode, and then the other stuff can hang off of that. We need that strong spine. So how do we figure out what the main storyline is in this episode? Well, it's pretty simple because the script tells us what it is, even though the writers completely forgot about it. But the story begins and ends the same way, with uses a framing device, and that device is Darren's. Is it Darren or Darren? Whatever. It starts with his log, and it ends with his log. So in the beginning, he's talking to his parents that he's pursuing excellence. You know, he wakes up early, he's working out, he's gonna be the best he could be. And then at the end, he gives the log, but now he's changed. He's a different guy as a result of what he's learned. So he's learned that being your best doesn't mean being the captain or the prima donna or the star. You just have to do your best in service to the team. So everything else in the episode should exist mostly in reference to his storyline. His is the most important. Now, why isn't Genesis as important to this as he is? Because they basically have the same story. They both want to be captain. They want to be stars. They both have issues with their parents. But the reason I'm saying it's his story and not hers is because we get a little more psychological insight into him. Whereas we don't get that kind of insight with her because she's not giving those logs. And she's really not as vulnerable as him. We don't hear like her reflections to others. She just kind of becomes the leader and then she's done. That's the end of her storyline. Whereas Darren has more going on after he becomes captain. Then he realizes he's not a good captain. He lets her become captain. He leaves the team. Then he rejoins in a lower role, but he doesn't care about that anymore because he's past that. And then he gets his log. So he has a bigger, longer journey. So I'm putting him as the main character for this episode. And most of what I'm going to change around this episode is going to deal with him because he's the central component. Now, why aren't the other storylines important? We could break them down a little. So let's take the pranks. The prank thing is kind of interesting because I think it's 7 minutes and 41 seconds or so, after the War College has teleported the Academy students around and they talk on the TV and the Academy kids are angry and embarrassed, they have Darren look up at the screen and he says, "This is war." And then they go to the titles. And so when I first watched this episode, I thought, oh, okay, that's what this is about. Because as I explained last time around, Star Trek usually has that deal where right before the credits, they give that
little surprise, and that kicks off the whole episode. So I thought this was structured well because it was going to be about pranks. But the problem is, even though they say this is war, when do the Academy kids actually do their first prank? They don't even start to do the prank, to even realize that they can do the prank, to realize what Ake was trying to tell them the whole time, until about 42 minutes and 50 seconds. And remember, this is over an hour long, this episode. So if you're an hour long show and you don't get to your first plot point in terms of the prank storyline until 42 minutes, that's a failure. That's not a storyline. And here's the bigger problem. By the time the Klingon kid, I still don't even know his name. The guy's like non-existent. He's a terrible character. And Darum joined the team, because remember, Darum left earlier. Now he's rejoining to help him out. That's at like 45 minutes and 30 seconds. By the time Darum joins the team, all the storylines are over. The episode is already done at that point. Because at that point, Darum already had all his realizations. He had all his character growth. Nothing happens after that with him. Even Genesis, probably the second most important character, her storyline is finished. Once she became captain, she was done with the episode. And that was way early during the sports thing, during the game. So the prank, does it work as a story? No, because there's no conflict. There's no difficulties. It's just this thing where they're trying to do this Ocean's 11, Ocean's 12 heist type setup, where each person has a little thing to do. And they have like the kind of hip hop heist movie soundtrack going on in the background. And they're showing them preparing, and then they're showing them doing it. Everything goes according to plan. Nothing goes wrong, really. There's no stakes, which I'm going to talk about more. So it's filler, it's fluff. The whole prank is garbage. You could throw that out because it has no impact on the story at all. Now, the only thing it does do is it allows Caleb and Tarima to talk at the end of that prank sequence. And that was good. I actually liked their scenes together in this. But you could do that without the prank, because at the point that Caleb talked to Tarima, the prank was done already. Okay, so that just further shows you that this prank is worthless. So basically, this show is not about pranks. They could have done it if they wanted to. But this script is telling me it's not about that. They're just wasting time with that, the prank stuff. They had an idea, and they were unable to execute it. When you want something to be part of the story, you have to braid it in from the beginning to the end, even if it's the B plot. And this doesn't even do that. So it's garbage. Okay, so what about the gym stuff at the beginning, the working out, the trying out for the team? Is that what this episode is about? Trying out for the team? Well, no, because everyone who wanted to join the team makes the team. So why even do tryouts? Nobody got kicked off the team. Even Sam, the hologram girl, and Tarima's brother, they're both completely out of shape. They're both inept. They're both screaming and crying and flopping around like morons. And guess what? They make the team. So I think that whole thing of trying out for the team, that's a stupid plot. They're wasting time with that too. Just cut that out. Just start with the people on the team already on the team. And the only meaningful competition really is between Darum and Genesis to be captain. That's what matters. Nothing else matters except that. And you want to hear a really crazy fact that'll really prove how bad these writers are? They don't get to the point where Genesis and Darum are competing for the captaincy until about 18 minutes into the episode. Everything before that is garbage. Literally just cut, toss it in the garbage. I don't need to see kids working out doing stupid exercises with medicine balls. We don't need like 5 minutes of them explaining how Calico works, the rules of the game, and how the obstacle course works. We're going to get it. It's laser tag, and it's an obstacle course. Easy to understand. All that crap, just toss it. Now, there is one thing before that I liked, and that's the opening sequence. When Darum is working out, and then he runs into Genesis in the corridor. That was good, and I'm going to use that as the core thing to set this all up. But right after that, you could just go right into the competition to be captain of the team. And you'll saved about, 17 minutes? So that's why this episode is so stuffed, because they stuffed it with so much garbage that I'm just tossing right out without changing anything. It's making it better. But because they stuffed it so much, all the actual storyline and character arcs feel really abbreviated because they're not allowed to have breathing space. They don't have enough time to put plot points, to show the characters changing, and to show the story progressing as they achieved or failed to achieve their objectives. So that's why this episode's stuffed and boring. There's too much in it and not enough in it. It's really strange, and this is the third episode in a row where they've kind of done this. They just have a really bad understanding of story structure and of how to pace stories and of how to find the main storyline in an idea. What about Ake? To what extent should she be part of this episode? Well, I think you could safely delete her because her whole purpose in this episode is to plant the seeds of the idea for the prank in the students. But as I just explained, the prank was stupid. You don't really need to, it doesn't exist. meaningfully in the episode. It doesn't contribute to the main storyline, and there's no consequences to it. So if you delete that, you basically should delete Ake. But in a more nuanced sense, she doesn't contribute to the growth of the characters. Maybe she has a little bit of impact on a little bit, like really little amount on Caleb at the end. Maybe Thok very slightly, but those are minor characters. The main character is Darum. The second major character is Genesis. She doesn't affect them at all, really. She's cut off from the other storylines. Like, she's not part of the sports stuff. She's not part of the tryouts. She's not part of the gym. She doesn't physically take part in the pranks. She's not physically present in that many of the key scenes. She's basically in her office just talking. She just talks like Yoda or something. And so I say just delete her. There's no point there. They did it to make Ake seem clever, and by extension to make themselves in the episode feel clever. Like, oh my God, Ake put the clues in from the start. That's crazy. But no, it wasn't actually crazy because her dialogue was horrible. It didn't make sense. The first time I watched it, it sounded like she was having a stroke while she was talking because there's nonsense coming out of her mouth. Now, of course, I watched the episode a second time. I always watch everything twice when I'm critiquing it like this. The second time around, I understood what she was saying because she was actually speaking in code to give the clues because the writers were so obsessed with folding those clues in from the start. So at the end, you'd be like, wow, okay, it makes sense. That's great. It blew my mind. But the problem is they're so focused on making it make sense later that they didn't make it make sense the first time around. She sounds like she's saying random crap, and she sounds really quirky and all that. So it just doesn't work at all. Just delete her. Get rid of her. Now, one thing I do want to say about Ake that I found astonishing is that after that first prank where the War College teleports everyone from the shower to all around campus to embarrass them, like naked, half naked or whatever, Thok goes to Ake's room or officer quarters or whatever that is. And she's saying we have to do something, we have to prevent it from getting worse. We have to punish them, teach them responsibility, that kind of stuff. And Ake doesn't care. She says that's kid stuff or kid shit or whatever. She doesn't take it seriously. And I don't understand how the writers could do this. She's the chancellor of the school. She's the captain of the ship. And she doesn't seem to care at all that some kids went rogue, like hacked into the system, used the transporters without permission, and then transported people naked and half naked out of the locker room and put them in public. Like if I went to a college campus, went into the women's bathroom, locker room, grabbed a girl who was in the shower naked, pulled her out of the locker room and shoved her in the center of the classroom, the way Caleb was naked in that classroom, no one's going to say, oh, that's fine. It's no big deal. Like, obviously that's criminal. It would be assault. I would be in serious, serious trouble. And if I were a student there and I did that, I'd probably get kicked out at the very least, if not have charges pressed against me. And it gets even worse. At the end, the academy kids use giant plants to prank and terrorize the War College kids. But we could see these plants grabbing kids and smashing them against the glass. So this prank is potentially murderous. This is what happened on the academy, in the Starfleet Academy, and Ake just doesn't give a shit. She's too busy being quirky, sitting in her chair, telling Thok to take it easy. I mean, Ake is just such a horrible character. Now, funny enough, I kind of like her, but I would like her if she was like the janitor, or she did the gardening, or she was like the bartender like Guinan. Like, she could be quirky and give advice, and then she could just like shut up and disappear and let the real characters handle things, the responsible characters. As the captain, she's a complete failure, and she's just ruining the show because when you have irresponsibility at the top, it seeps down in a real organization, but also in this show. And all these characters are just idiots and clowns, basically. And it stems from her, I think. So Darum is the most important character in this episode. He's the only character with a full arc, or at least the semblance of a full arc. Everything else failed to have that kind of importance. And that's why I'm either going to minimize it or delete it. And so earlier I said they don't have an A plot in this episode. So how could I get an A plot out of this? Well, again, the script told us how. It was there, but the writers didn't use it. And I kind of understand that. Sometimes the solutions are so obvious that you can't see it. And that's why you have workshops or you put it away and then reread it like a few weeks later. So what's the obvious thing here? Well, several times in this episode, Ake and Thok talk about how the commission is going to come to the academy. They're going to visit, I guess, to like judge the academy to see how it's going, to see if it should continue to exist or if it should receive funding and so on. But we never see the commission. They never arrived in the episode. Until the end, they mention it, but we don't see them on screen. And it's like the last 2 minutes or something. Okay, so it's obvious what you should do. Have them come at the beginning. In the first 5 minutes, first 10 minutes, the commission arrives and they're watching. And they're there and they could see these pranks going on, and that puts the future of the academy at risk. So the A plot would be, is the academy going to survive when you have these representatives of Starfleet coming to examine the academy and the curriculum? Okay, that's one option. But there's another option that it's kind of similar, but the script also mentioned it. I mean, we have a lot of options here, and I don't know why they didn't take it. But basically, this episode starts with Darum talking to his parents, saying that he's doing the best, he's going to be the best, he's going to make them proud, he's going to be number one, he's going to be the captain and all that. Then he goes outside, and Genesis surprises him, kind of humiliates him, and he realizes, well, maybe he's not the best, he's going to fight for it. So what could he do to give an A plot, a bigger plot, and to put stakes into this? Before I say, let me go into the second major problem so that you could better understand the changes that I'm making. And once I introduce this, you're going to start to see how this episode comes together, hopefully in a better way. The problem is there are no stakes. None of the storylines have stakes or consequences. So basically, they're doing pranks. Let's say the academy fails to successfully prank the War College. So what? What would happen? Is the universe going to explode? Is the academy going to be canceled? They're going to lose funding and everyone's have to go home? Are the students going to fail and get Fs? No, because it's stupid pranks. They're doing this because they want to do it. They're doing pranks. There's no stakes behind it. Same thing with the sports match. What happens if they lose? Nothing, because it's not even a real match. It's unsanctioned. It's not like they're going to be kicked out of a tournament. It's not like they're going to lose their scholarship or something. So there's no stakes in it. And that's why I was really, really bored watching this stuff. Because I'm like, I don't give a shit who wins or loses. It's no big deal. And that's why actually, in so much of this episode, they used a lot of amped up hip hop music. They put it really loud, just constantly. Every time things were boring and there was no stakes, they were like, okay, hit the hip hop music. And they put it in there. So they did hip hop during the workout in the gym at the beginning, around 2:20. They did it during the Calica match, like around 17 minutes. They did it during the Calica game at like 35 minutes. They did it at like 40 and a half minutes when Doc and Reno came in to stop the game for no reason. They just stopped it because the writers knew it was garbage and they had to stop it at some point because nothing was going to happen with it. There's going to be no consequence, so they ended it. Then it happened at 47 minutes in the elevator as they're setting up the prank and getting ready to do the prank and all that. So a lot of hip hop music to cover for the fact that nothing is happening and it's really boring. They're trying to create the illusion that things are happening with the stupid music. But anyways, the whole point here is that the show needs some stakes. There needs to be something at stake. If they fail, something bad should happen in theory, because that makes you care about the characters. That gives them something to fight for and fight against. And you might be thinking that what I just said doesn't make sense because after all, we all watch or play sports and we get really into them, right? We cheer, we scream, we yell, we cry, we celebrate. And if you're going to play, when you play in like high school, you really want to be good and you're practicing, you're nervous, and then you win and your parents see you and it's like your proudest moment in your life and that kind of stuff. Or maybe you watch your kids and you're proud of them playing. So yes, of course, sports can be a worthy theme. I'm not saying you can't do a thing about sports. Like Rocky is a good movie. But what I'm saying is, even though there might not be like physical stakes, like in terms of explosions and terrorist activity and that kind of stuff, like action movies, you still need psychological stakes. And that's what this episode completely failed to do. Because their whole idea of stakes and psychological motivation is just to have kids say, I have daddy issues. I have mommy issues. I want to be number one. Like just stating it like that, you're not going to feel anything. You don't like the characters. You're not rooting for the characters. You need more. You can't have characters announce what they care about or announce what they want or announce what they're afraid of. You need to see it. Like Indiana Jones doesn't just say, I'm scared of snakes. You see him terrified of snakes. They're actually there. He's reacting to it, and it changes the plot. It makes it fun. It's exciting. It's unexpected. And you feel for the character because even though he's a badass, he seems struggling with kind of a silly fear. But in this episode, you don't see Darum or Genesis confronting their parents. Their parents aren't in the episode at all. They just talk about it a few times in a few sentences. All right, so now hopefully you're starting to see where I'm going with this thing. How we can introduce stakes to this episode pretty easily using the material that's already here in the episode. We don't have to invent crazy stuff to make it work. But here's the crazy thing. We could introduce stakes into this episode with the same move that will also create an A plot in this episode. All right, because usually it's kind of like math and science. The best solution is usually elegant and simple. You want efficiency and elegance. And so, how about Darum's parents arrive unexpectedly? He's been emailing them or messaging them, whatever. They don't respond. Then one day he comes back to his dorm and his parents are in there waiting for him. And that would be the big surprising moment. You can really unravel the episode by asking why they're here. You always want to ask what that character's motivation is or what they want for that scene and the whole episode. So the parents are here because remember, Darum is royalty. So his parents are presumably the king and the queen or something high up on this planet. And this planet is a key component of the Federation. So I would say Starfleet wants to build a starbase in orbit around their planet. They said yes, except for they asked for one thing in return, a simple, small thing. They want to be on the commission overseeing the Academy. Starfleet says, sure, whatever, go ahead. And now they're here to oversee it. But the reason they did this, of course, is because they already know what they think about the Academy. They want to close it before they even get there. This is just a formality. Because they have no respect for their son. They think he's wasting his time in the Academy. They want to close this down and end his career so that he would go back to their planet and resume his role as part of the royalty. So he would have to do parades, shake hands, get ready to take over. But he doesn't want this for himself. He wants to be a Starfleet officer. The episode is about him proving to his parents that he's worthy of their respect. And he thinks he has to do that by being number one. But the problem is, despite what he thought at the very beginning, he's having a lot of trouble with Genesis. He's not able to do it because Genesis is so much better than him at everything. She's better. She's always getting number one in everything. She's beating him in this contest to be captain and beating him in grades and stuff like that. And his parents are right there. So he's feeling the pressure because they demand excellence. And that's like the crux of his conflict. Like, how is he going to make them proud when he's having trouble? Can he tell them that maybe he might be number two? Or is he going to hide it from them? Or is he going to lie? Or is he going to cheat using a version of these pranks? How is he going to handle this situation? So now you have a little bit of, you have tension, you have obstacles, you have stakes. Now the episode is starting to form a little. This would give you personal stakes. This would give you stakes for the A plot and the B plot. This would add tension. This adds consequences. Because if he fails, not only is he basically kicked out or forced out of the Academy, but the Academy as a whole would face destruction. It would be folded into the War College or whatever, and that would be the end of that dream. So all this weight is on him, and he's desperate to somehow prove to his parents who never respected him that he's worthy of respect. But there's still more we could do here. Here's another crazy idea. What if Genesis's dad comes? Remember, her dad is an admiral. So why not just make her dad a member of the commission? Okay, they both have parent issues, so why don't both their parents come into the episode? And it just so happens that his daughter's here, and he's going to talk to her and visit her while he's there. So now you'll see her interacting with her father, that tension, her daddy issues. And so now you have all that conflict there. Now you're going to see Darum's parental issues. You're going to see Genesis' parental issues. And overall, you have the fate of the Academy in the line because this commission is watching and judging. There are a few details about my version of the episode that I want to lay out here just to kind of clarify things. The first thing is that the background for this whole episode would be that it's the start of the Calica season. And so it's the first match of the season, and it happens to be the War College versus the Academy. And I would make it so that the War College hasn't lost the first game of the season in 100 years since the start of the burn. Or maybe every time they won their first match, they won the whole season. So that right there would give you a rivalry, and that would put stakes onto this match and explain why the War College and the Academy are so tense against each other. Because this is the first match, and it has a lot of weight historically or for the future of the season. The second thing is that I would have, as Darum is trying to be number one, as he and Genesis are locked in this battle to be number one and become captain, I would have him lose really badly, except at one thing. Maybe he's good at the sprints or some running fast or something like that. But other than that, he's just getting worked over by her. And at the end of that sequence, when they're competing, he basically quits. He realizes it's not going to happen. And he's freaked out about his parents there. And so one morning, instead of working out, Genesis finds him like in the cafeteria at a table. And she would see him. She'd say like, well, what are you doing here? You're usually exercising at this time. And he would say there's no point. He can't beat her. She's going to win. And he's like depressed about it. So she feels bad for him. She sits down with him at the table. They talk about his problems and his parents. And then she opens up about her problems. So then in the next scene when they're competing to become captain, maybe the last day to try out or whatever before the games actually start, the tournament starts, Darum would use that information that she told him about her father and her issues with him. He would purposely use that to psych her out and win. So he basically betrays her. Because right now, he literally screams like, "Your daddy," or something. He just said something really lame out of nowhere, and that supposedly made him win. I want to set it up where they have a conversation. They're talking in trust, and then he abuses that and uses that against her consciously. So that's a much stronger plot point, and that would create real tension between them. Then Darum would be unable to win the game as captain. He doesn't have leadership skills. He doesn't really realize it, but he's just not winning, and his parents are watching, so he's feeling the pressure. And that's what makes him turn to doing pranks, or essentially kind of like cheating to beat the War College. So he would do a prank like maybe making their alarm turn on early in the morning so they mess up their sleep, turn on the fire alarm in the War College, mess with their shower, something like that. So he's doing pranks to get an edge, to try to win. But the War College would strike back and humiliate him somehow, maybe with another prank of their own against him personally. And so he would lash out wildly in the match. He would lose authority, and maybe he would be fouled out. Genesis would become captain. She would use strategic thinking to actually win. So now they're doing good. It turns it around. The team's doing well until the War College subs in a new player who's really fast, maybe. And so then obviously they start losing because this player is too fast. And so she goes to Darum and talks to him and asks him to rejoin because he's the only one who could take that guy on because he has the speed. So he's not a good leader, but at least he has the speed and he has a place in the team. So that's the general journey there. Now, I haven't mentioned Caleb and Tarima much in this review. I liked the interaction between the characters. I thought it was much better. It felt like they had chemistry. But their story was really bad. They only talked to each other in 2 scenes on the basketball court near the beginning, and then at the end after Caleb finishes the prank. The problem is those 2 scenes are essentially the same. They basically repeat. They're like clones of each other. And so what I would do in my version, you could, if you want, there's 2 moves you can make. One is you could braid those 2 characters. They're both playing on the teams. So as they're playing the match, War College versus Academy, they could talk during the matches when they're close to each other, tackling each other, that kind of thing. And they could work stuff out throughout the episode, throughout the tournament. The other thing you could do is just not put them in this. Because that story is so big, it needs a lot of space for these 2 characters to realize this misunderstanding and to talk and to like express their feelings like that. That I think that could be told in its own episode almost, as maybe like a B plot. And maybe that is the best move. Because you want to keep characters in conflict for as long as you can. You don't want to fix it up immediately. And that's what this episode did. In 2 scenes, everything's fine. That's bad storytelling. They should keep it going on longer, that tension, and do its own episode. The last thing I'll say here is that since I introduced that committee, whether it's Darum's parents or Genesis's dad or both or neither, but I think a committee needs to come. That committee needs its own storyline other than just like watching Darum in the tournament and stuff like that. They need to do something there on campus. And so what I would maybe have them do is they would confront Ake over her behavior in the first episode when they were in space fighting the pirate and stuff like that. And maybe over how she's given Caleb special treatment. Because I think earlier I said she's lost so much authority because she's so wacky and crazy. And so you could kind of call her out for it and then correct that to where she's going to change a little bit. Because basically they're going to say that she was irresponsible for entering the cloud. She was supposed to go straight to San Francisco in that first episode. And I'm not going to go into detail because that's a different storyline. I don't want to rehash that. But basically, they're kind of like interrogating her, or maybe that's too strong a word, but they're examining her leadership abilities and whether she should continue to be the chancellor. And so maybe they would call in Darum because in that first episode, he did that stunt where he walked outside of the ship because he could survive in 0G and space and vacuum. And so maybe they would ask him if he felt in danger, if she put him in danger or not, if it was a good move on her part. And they could ask other students things too, but I'm focusing on him because it intersects with his story. And so in the process of the committee, like forensically analyzing Ake and her leadership past in the first episode, and maybe the second episode too, he would realize something about leadership. So that would come to play into his larger journey with the sports and the captain and his parents and stuff like that. So that's how I would wrap that together. So that's it for this episode. Let's see what happens in the next one. If you made it this far, please like, subscribe, and take care.